I matter? Doesn't my future matter? Don't children matter? Nothing to boast, just a story of childhood lost. My childhood that you stole from me. How long before you open your eyes and see? You let me believe that it's not a big deal to smoke, and my candies laced with drugs make me choke. You make me roll your drag and carry your drugs. You let me believe that getting high is cool, when really I should have been in school. You don't seem to mind that I don't play, or where I go when I'm missing, when you kneel down to pray. You let me believe I don't matter, and say there are issues that are larger. You let me think it doesn't matter if I exist, and all of this is just a big problem in a gist. So tell me, don't I really matter? Doesn't my future matter? Don't children matter?
Sushagatom.
My cousin is a number children matter.
Swagatam. Vevalamun.
Welcome.
ഭയങ്കര എക്സൈറ്റഡ് ആയിരുന്നു.
മക്കളോടുള്ള പെരുമാറ്റ രീതിയിൽ ഒരുപാട് മാറ്റം വന്നു.
തുറന്നു പറയാനായിട്ട് നല്ലൊരിടം.
മദേഴ്സ് സ്കൂളോ നമ്മൾ കേൾക്കുമ്പോൾ തന്നെ അങ്ങനെയല്ലേ കുട്ടികളല്ലേ സ്കൂളിൽ പോകാം. മദേഴ്സിന് സ്കൂളാണ്.
ആദ്യം ഒരു കൗതുകം തോന്നി.
അവരെല്ലാവരും ഒരേ സ്വരത്തിൽ പറഞ്ഞ കാര്യമാണ് ഞങ്ങളുടെ സ്വഭാവത്തിൽ മാറ്റം വന്നു, ഞങ്ങളുടെ ജീവിതചര്യകളിൽ മാറ്റം വന്നു, മക്കളോടുള്ള പെരുമാറ്റ രീതിയിൽ ഒരുപാട് മാറ്റം വന്നു.
നമ്മളെല്ലാവരും ഒന്നാന്നൊരു ഫീലിംഗ് വന്നു. എല്ലാവരും ഓപ്പണായിട്ട് ഷെയർ ചെയ്യാം.
പ്രോജക്റ്റ് വേണ്ടയെ സംബന്ധിച്ചിടത്തോളം കുട്ടികളെ ലഹരി പദാർത്ഥ ദുരുപയോഗത്തിൽ നിന്നും സംരക്ഷിക്കുന്നതിൽ ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതൽ ഇൻഫ്ലുവൻസ് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുന്നത് പാരൻസിനാണ്, എസ്പെഷ്യലി മദേഴ്സ്
സ്കൂളിൽ വന്നിട്ട് ഒരുപാട് കാര്യങ്ങൾ പഠിക്കാൻ സാധിച്ചു.
ഞങ്ങളുടെ വീട്ടിൽ ഒരാൾക്കൊരു മാറ്റം വന്നപ്പോൾ മൊത്തം ഫാമിലിക്കും മാറ്റമായി.
അവരുടെ ഉള്ളിലെ വേദനകളും സങ്കടങ്ങളൊക്കെ അവർക്ക് തുറന്നു പറയാനായിട്ട് ഒരു ഇടം കണ്ടെത്താനായിട്ട് ഞങ്ങൾക്കിവിടെ കഴിഞ്ഞു.
നല്ല ക്ലാസ്സാണ്, വളരെ ഉപകാരപ്രദമായ, നമുക്ക് അറിയാൻ പാടില്ലാത്ത കുറേ കാര്യങ്ങൾ അറിയാനും പറ്റി.
അമ്മ എന്ന നിലയിൽ നമുക്ക് കുറേയേറെ മാറ്റങ്ങൾ വരുത്താൻ സാധിച്ചു.
നമ്മൾ കേൾക്കാൻ ആരും ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നില്ല.
മക്കളുടെ വളർച്ചയിൽ ഒരപ്പൻ്റെ അമ്മയുടെ റോൾ എങ്ങനെയാണ് അതൊക്കെയാണ് അവിടെ പറഞ്ഞു തരണത്.
അപ്പോൾ ആളുകൾ കൂടിയാണ് അവരുടെ മുമ്പിൽ പോയി നിൽക്കാൻ പോലും എനിക്ക് പേടിയാ. അങ്ങനത്തെ ഒരു സ്വഭാവമായിരുന്നു എൻ്റെത്. ഇത്തിരിയൊക്കെ മാറ്റം വന്നിട്ടുണ്ട്, അതിൽ കുറേയൊക്കെ മാറ്റം വന്നിട്ടുണ്ട്.
എല്ലാ അമ്മമാർക്കും, ഞാനുൾപ്പെടെ എല്ലാ അമ്മമാർക്കും നല്ല ആത്മവിശ്വാസം കിട്ടി.
ശരിക്കും ഇപ്പം ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞില്ലേ, ഇപ്പം ഇന്ന് വന്ന് സംസാരിക്കണ എന്നെ സംബന്ധിച്ചിടത്തോളം ഒരു ആദ്യത്തെ കാര്യമാണ്.
അപ്പം അത്രയും എനിക്ക് ഇഷ്ടമുള്ളത് കൊണ്ടാണ് ഞാൻ ഇങ്ങനെ വരുന്നത്. സ്കൂൾ സൂപ്പർ, ഇനിയും ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ഇനിയും വരും, അത്ര തന്നെ.
നല്ല അമ്മമാരാകാം, കൂടുതൽ ബെറ്റർ അമ്മ ആവണം എന്നാണല്ലോ നമ്മളെല്ലാവരും ആഗ്രഹിക്കണേ.
I'm a catalyst.
I'm a catalyst.
I'm a catalyst.
I'm a catalyst.
I'm a catalyst. I'm a catalyst.
I'm a catalyst.
I'm a catalyst.
Don't I matter? Doesn't my future matter? Don't children matter? Nothing to boast, just a story of childhood lost. My childhood that you stole from me. How long before you open your eyes and see? You let me believe that it's not a big deal to smoke, and and my candies laced with drugs make me choke. You make me roll your drag and carry your drugs. You let me believe that getting high is cool, when really I should have been in school. You don't seem to mind that I don't play, or where I go when I'm missing, when you kneel down to pray. You let me believe I don't matter, and say there are issues that are larger. You let me think it doesn't matter if I exist, and all of this is just a big problem in a gist. So tell me, don't I really matter? Doesn't my future matter? Don't children matter?
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. For those who saw me yesterday, it's me again, and for those who are new here, welcome, all of you. I'm very happy to open the third day for you, as we have an exciting day ahead of us. I would like to say a small technical announcement for those who are leaving today and have to check out of the hotel. You can do that during the tea break. And if you'd like to do it afterwards, you can always extend your stay and talk to the reception about that. I was asked to share a little recap from yesterday, or the last 2 days actually, and it was very difficult, I have to say, because a lot of things were talked about, and I didn't want to repeat myself from the little recap yesterday. But what I can say that the last 2 days is that we have discussed a large variety of areas in the context of prevention, treatment, and recovery, with a particular focus of children's rights. And we have learned that every aspect is of necessity and is often intertwined. Yet I think there are a few bullet points that were overarching the core message of our speakers. And when it comes to enhancing the right of the child of a drug-free environment. The first point I think that came across was that prevention, protection, and participation is a right. And without allowing the child to participate, the voices are not only ignored, their right is also being neglected. The second point I would like to point out is that children and youth are the strongest voice in spreading the message we were trying to get across during these days. Then there is the need for community, school, and parent involvement. These stakeholders are essential in the outreach to children, early detection, and offering a safe environment. The fourth point is that various levels of stakeholders should work together. This can be done through these forums that we're organizing here, or through disciplinary teams, collaboration among NGOs and policymakers, and so many more. We also should increase the capacity on a large scale. Trainers should be trained, as well as the community, parents, and others. We should increase the problem-solving people. Another point is that many good practices are out there, and many comprehensive guidelines are being made, such, for example, given by the UNODC. But we have to work together to close the gaps that are currently still existing, because together we are stronger. We also should change the terminology, the language, and reduce stigma and barriers that youth are currently facing. And we also should raise awareness among us, raise awareness among the community, the parents, and also all other stakeholders that are involved. One example I would like to point out is that as you have a booklet in your bag right now, we actually, with the team of Fourth Way Foundation, we did a study here in Kerala to see how treatment is accessible and how treatment is being perceived for children. That is one way of raising awareness as well, by contacting them, sending out surveys, and get a conversation going. And I could go on, but as my time runs out, as well as my paper, I try to stop. So I think we can remember that children are citizens and have the right to protection and self-determination. Children matter, and with that, I would like to welcome you to our third day officially. And I would like to introduce you to our moderator of today, C.C. Joseph. He will guide you throughout the day. He is the director of Fourth Way Foundation and has more than 2 decades of experience in creating and implementing professional, educational, and social initiatives for national and international organizations. But before I will give him the stage, I believe we have a video, a recap video. Oh, you will do that. Okay. C.C. Joseph.
Good morning. Thank you, Chris, for leading us wonderfully yesterday. Over here, okay? So you can find a full form for CC, and during the breaks, you can catch me and give me an explanation. And I promise a prize if what you say I like. Okay, so the condition is very simple. I should like what you are saying. So that's the day. We have a lot of fun aligned for you today because the discussions can become really intense, because the first discussion we are going to have is about the cannabis conundrum. Okay, then we will have a discussion on the role of media, and then we will have a discussion on the role of all the stakeholders, and then we go into the valedictory where Alphonsus, the music director, will join us. He will sing for us also, and we end with a surprise today. There's a big surprise that is awaiting, which only a few in Team Venda knows. So we will end the day sharp around 4, because a lot of people are leaving also today. So let us start before we welcome Bala onto stage to speak. We'll have the first and the second day a summary as a video for you, especially for those who have missed, so you know what happened in the first 2 days and somehow come to terms with what we are going to do today. So that was day 1 and 2. Now we officially begin day 3. So can we all stand up for a few seconds, please? Because we have close to 100 youngsters with us now. A few are on the way, and the 50 Youth Forum participants have already started their session. So if we all can just move around and say welcome, especially to the youngsters over here. Thank you so much. like we always said, and we will keep saying, without the young of Kerala, we don't have a solution for this problem in Kerala. Also, when you saw the videos, I'm sure you are aware of the installation outside. To make sense of what is happening over there, like we said, you have to go to the level of a child, so you will have to sit on the chair. Okay, so those who have not sat on the chair and seen what is there, sit on the chair, otherwise it is just a few photographs hanging on few strings out there. So with that, let me start day 3. I have the great privilege to introduce Mr. C. Balagopal, who is the chairman of the board of directors of the Federal Bank, and is also the advisory board member of Fourth Wave Foundation. We call him Bala, okay, and I take the freedom to call him Bala. Bala is involved in mentoring and investing in startup ventures and community development activities and writing. He's the mentor of the Medical Technology Business Incubator. And very interesting fact about him is he was part of the Indian Civil Service. He was a IAS in 1977. He had various posts, but Bala resigned, came to Kerala, started Thermopen Pol, and today it has become one of the largest blood bag manufacturers in the world. Okay, so, and Bala keeps always talking about, every time I listen to Bala, he challenges the way we think. And also, we want to especially acknowledge Bala and his wife, Winnie ma'am, for supporting the girls' team during the last Vienna Cup. So all the girls' team that played, I'll explain about that in the afternoon, was because of the gracious support of Bala and Winnie ma'am. And Bala, those who are from Kerala, you understand when I say he built the largest company. To build a large company in Kerala is almost an impossibility, okay, because you know how challenging it is. But Bala keeps on saying, it is only the narrative, there is something different that we have to look at. And Bala is a great inspiration, a great support. And thank you, Bala, for joining us. And I'll let the youngsters listen to you now. Thank you, Bala.
Good morning. And thank you, CC, for that very nice introduction. And I was told yesterday by Diana that I must address my remarks to the 150 young people who are attending today's session, young students from schools and colleges in Kerala. So I asked her, should I speak in Malayalam or should I speak in English? And she said, no, I must speak in English because there are many delegates here from various parts of the world, and also that the students coming are familiar with English, and so there should be no problem. So നിങ്ങളുടെ എല്ലാവരുടെയും അനുവാദത്തോടു കൂടി എൻ്റെ പ്രസംഗം ഇംഗ്ലീഷിൽ തുടരും. I must one caveat, one clarification is I'm not here in my capacity as chairman of the board of directors of the bank. I'm not speaking for the bank. Of course, the Federal Bank has been supporting the initiative of Vienna and the Fourth Wave Foundation, and we are very happy to do that. But I am here in a much more involved capacity as a parent, as a grandparent, and as a member of the community, as a citizen. And quite frankly, just like many other ordinary lay people, I too thought I have some idea about what is happening around me. And it was only after I came into contact with Diana and CC and the work of Vienna that I began to understand the true dimensions of this problem and how serious it is. And I don't think many of us people today understand it. One just has to, for instance, take a look at the media coverage, say, over the last 100 days. And quite frankly, you will think there is no drug problem in India. If you look at mainstream media and look at the number of items. And it'll be a very interesting exercise. I think some of our young students here should just do this as a project. Should just audit the last 100 days of mainstream media coverage of various items, put them into categories, and say if somebody came from Mars or maybe from some other country, why from Mars, and looked at the Malayalam press media here and decided from the content of the mainstream media what are the concerns of the people here. I think you will draw some astonishing, and if it wasn't so serious, some really hilarious conclusions they will draw. But unfortunately, this is not a hilarious matter. This matter which we are dealing with is extremely serious, and I think we should all be terribly concerned about it. I was glad to have had the opportunity to briefly sit here for 1 or 2 sessions yesterday to attend, to understand the tone and tenor of the discussions, because, you know, as a speaker coming on the 3rd day, and if you are not familiar with what is the flow, then you are likely to land up saying something which is, you know, which goes against the flow. So I wanted to avoid that, and so I sat here, and I was very much, you know, instructed by, it was very instructive for me. One of the points which I reflected on after listening to that, to the sessions yesterday was that, you know, when we talk about multi-stakeholder engagement, which is the theme which I've been asked to talk about, then who are the stakeholders? So people start with the individual level, and there is a lot of messaging which can be an effort which is directed at behavior modification at the individual level, you know, so that we feel that you can tackle it from the demand side and say that, you know, somehow if people lose their craving for substances which take them out of the humdrum experience of their lives, whether it is smoking, whether it is alcohol, or whether it is substance use, if you can persuade people that there are other ways to do, you know. But I was just thinking, I think a lot of much greater people than us over the last millennia, several millennia, have been trying to change human behavior. And if you look at the evidence of the 21st century so far, I don't think they have been met with much success. That's no reason, of course, not to try again. But there is something Sisyphean about this effort of trying to change human nature. So we have individual level, then you have the community and family level, which is, in my opinion, a very much more meaningful level, and which in our country and this state has not been addressed sufficiently. You know, families somehow sort of absolve themselves of all responsibility, and usually all the blame is put on that prodigal son or daughter or whoever committed the mistake, and everybody tries to find out why did he or she behave that way. But you know, one of the speakers yesterday said, even health is a social product. That is our, you know, our physical health is a social product, which is actually so amazing, but it is so true, isn't it, when we reflect on it. It is not a medical phenomenon at all. It is a social product. And until we understand that health is a social product, we'll be barking up the wrong tree, throwing billions down the drain, and not getting the health outcomes which we want. The same problem can happen in this case also, unless we understand the fact that families and community are implicated in the problem. It is not an individual problem. And finally, we come to the final stakeholder, and that is the state. What is the responsibility of the state or the government? It's an enormous responsibility. Because if you look at it, see, there are other problems which human beings face, isn't it? One is drug abuse, the danger from substance abuse. Many years ago for a medical conference, and I was advised that our hotel is located in a very good part of town, but they said, if I step out of that area and then turn left, then you're on your own, kind of. And so it was slightly difficult for me to understand. And at that time, 15 years ago, I thought, oh, luckily we in India are much safer. We are not, things are not that bad. Today, I'm not so sure in some of our big cities whether, what happened in Johannesburg there is not beginning to happen in gated communities and fenced, these kind of security zones are not creeping up here also. So these are the three stakeholders, and I want our young friends to reflect on this. Because I feel if we try to tackle, or if we all are messaging, and if all our efforts are going to be directed at individual behavior modification and individual behavior change, I'm afraid we are not going to see very, I'm skeptical about the kind of results which you're going to see. Because say, for instance, physical safety, how can we assure safety without the state as represented by the police doing their job? There is a penalty. There are certain compliance-related, non-negotiable compliance-related issues which apply to every citizen. And the only legally sanctioned violence in any democratic societies belongs to the government, isn't it? Constitutionally, they are legally sanctioned to use violence. But that kind of deterrence is necessary sometimes to get the kind of peaceful existence which we want for the majority of society. So there are some, these are some of the issues. I've started on a fairly sobering note, so it looks like the situation is not good. It looks like we've got a real tough road to climb. It's a steep uphill path, and how are we going to do that? But the good news is that we are here in this specific case, we are talking in Kerala. And here is a small state. It's big by European standards with 34 million population, but it's a very small state in India. It has 1%, of the land area of India and 2.5% of the population of India. And it has, I think, 4 to 5% of the GDP of India, because it's also one of the richest states in the country in terms of economic development. Now, this state, with its it is still a third world, it is still from the economic south, even though per capita GDP is now approaching about $4,000, which brings it to lower middle income status, even though it is in that status, and even though as I mentioned, with 2.5% of the population of India, 10% of the consumer products of India are bought in this state. So which indicates that by far the average standard of living is the highest in this country, which is shared only by a few urban areas across the country, whereas across the state itself is like this. This state has also recorded the best performance in poverty alleviation. The latest figures which I have seen for multi-dimensional poverty index, while the figure for India is 27%, that is 27% of the people of this country suffer from multi-dimensional poverty. And the states which are nearest to Kerala are 7 to 8% of the population suffers from multi-dimensional poverty. In the state of Kerala, less than 1% of the people suffer from multi-dimensional poverty. Now that's an astonishing achievement for a region and for a state. And thank you. I think the state really, and the people of the state really deserve an applause. So the message to the young people which I want to say here is, if we think this is a very steep road to climb, if we think the task before us is really difficult, I want to tell you it is. I'm not going to tell you it is not. It is a huge ask. How are we going to tackle the drug menace? It's a massive task. But what it requires is mobilization of the entire population, and in all sections of society. So when we talk about, when I come back to the subject which I was given, which was multi-stakeholder engagement, unless the state engages all levels, all stakeholders in this effort, we are going to be finding it a very difficult task, going ahead. But as I said, if we look at the track record of this state in the last 3 to 4 decades, what Kerala has achieved could not have been achieved without mass stakeholder engagement at all levels. Our literacy, the fact that this state achieved almost universal literacy 25, 30 years ago, when the rest of India was still below 50% literacy, showed that this was an outlier. This state stood out. And there are many historical and cultural factors for it. For instance, this state has a syncretic culture, and where other faiths and religious beliefs from the other parts of the world came here through trade. They were not brought here by the sword or by conquest. And so there is a huge difference in the attitude towards religious identity in the south of India and in the north of India. And particularly on this thin, small sliver of the southwest coast. So, long before people spoke about globalization, Kerala was globalized. We were exposed to, in fact, we had more connections with Aden and Rome and China and Indochina than we had with the rest of mainland India. The rampart of the Western Ghats was more than a physical barrier. It was even like a mental barrier. Keralites looked out. So my point here is, because of this certain unique, not only geoclimatic characteristics, but which also led to certain cultural characteristics of this state, we evolved certain ways of working. Now, yesterday I happened to listen to the representative from Iceland who made a talk, and it made a very big impression on me, what she spoke about as having been accomplished by that very small country. And now when we again, but there was a very important lesson there. So I feel that the experience of Iceland is something which Vienna and Fourth Way Foundation should take and document and should send people to study it in greater, and the expert, she herself is here, the representative from Iceland, and so we should find that out. Why I say that is, all the achievements of mobilization of the Kerala society and various stakeholders in Kerala in the past towards achieving high literacy, high human development indices, high development indices, all this was not top-down. All this was actually bottom-up. And that was achieved by mobilization right down to the panchayat level. Our lowest, smallest form of unit of local self-government is called the panchayat. And the panchayat average population works out to around 30,000, which is about 1/10 of Iceland's population, I think. So in Kerala, we have 1,000 panchayats, and we have a lot more panchayat wards. So I think a program like this can only work with, when we say involvement of the people, we also are talking about superintendence, supervision, oversight. Now these cannot be from a state headquarters or from a national headquarters. The superintendence and oversight has to be done by the local people, by the local community, by the parents. Only then will it work. And so my message to the young people is, each of you are from small towns, small panchayats scattered across Kerala. Kerala has a distributed urbanization pattern very different from the rest of India. If you see most of the other larger Indian states, you have a giant urban agglomeration, and then you have the rest of the countryside, which all the resources get sucked up by this huge urban agglomeration, very little is given back. Kerala, with its 34 million population, according to the 2011 census, the latest one has not yet been done, but the 2011 census revealed that Kerala had 7 cities of 1.5 million population, and evenly distributed north to the south. So there was no one dominant urban area. So urbanization is a distributed phenomenon. And more than 50, I think latest figure is around 55% of Kerala is urbanized, which is a pretty high figure for India when you consider that the national figure is only 30%. Kerala is, so our young people are from across the state, from geographically distributed in urban areas as well as in rural areas. So I think here is an opportunity for us to do this, take this messaging. And I want to end here, because my time is limited. I want to end here with saying that my first acquaintance with Fourth Way Foundation and Vienna program was when I met Diana and Cece a few years ago And they were telling me about their project which they were doing in the little community of Chellanam. Now, Chellanam is a panchayat, and it's a very poor panchayat. And they got involved with the panchayat in the life of the panchayat, in the social life, family life, the cultural life, including, sponsoring football teams. And that's how we came to know about the young players and their passion for football, soccer. So I think it's very important that all our young friends here be given training in what happened in Chellanam. The program at Chellanam is an amazing program. And the learnings from the program at Chellanam are the ones which have brought this unique flavor to the Vienna program, which is now being run out across the state in 6 districts which have been identified as high-risk districts. So I think we have here a very fine kind of template, which is, I'm sure it is still a work in progress, but it is a model and a template which is worth trying out. And this template and this model will only work in a bottom-up way. And actually, any change, any societal change, any meaningful change can only happen bottom-up. And here we have the template, we have the fact that they've done a pilot for a few years, all the learnings have been gathered together, put together, there is a handbook, there is a how-to set of manuals which have emerged, and the experience of so many experienced people who have faced the same problem in their own countries, in their own parts of the world have all come together. So now it's up to you young people. And I have the greatest confidence that if any state in Kerala, in India, is equipped to deal with this problem, though it's such a serious problem in Kerala and we are the worst hit, we are very hard hit by this problem. But if any state, ironically, if any state is equipped to deal with this problem, it is Kerala state too. So I thank the organizers of this session for having given me this opportunity to share a few thoughts with people who have spent most of their working lives working on this problem. There's so much to learn from them. I hope that the young people here use this time which they have today to open their minds, to absorb all the inputs, and to go out inspired with the conviction that not only they can make a difference, but in Kerala it has been done in the past. So I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Bala. Inspiring us always. Just an example of how the state is getting interested in the activities we are doing and how serious they are in involving. Last night around 10:30 in the night, I think so, the DIG of Trivandrum had come. The Deputy Inspector General of Trivandrum had come and spent a long time with us trying to understand how the legal system or the law can help us in preventing. Before coming here, we had a long meeting with the DIG of Ernakulam. So the systems are falling in place, systems are coming together, and I believe with the young voices, we will be able to make a difference in Kerala. Thank you, Bala, for being with us, and thank you for all the support that you have given us over the years. For the next panel, I have the great privilege to invite Regina Mattsson into our midst, as she will be moderating the panel. She is the Secretary General of the World Federation Against Drugs, which has about 380 members spread across 64 countries. Regina was instrumental in implementing the WFAD 10-year strategy plan and also holds a seat as the Civil Society Forum on Drugs, an expert group of the European Commission. But more than that, I was really inspired by her on the first day. First day, a group of people landed and there was some challenge in the check-in, okay, and it was a bit delayed and Regina was struggling with migraine and, it took a time for them to be checked in, and I think what I understand from what she said was she spoke a little bit louder to the receptionist because she could not control, but she went to her room and then called the reception and said, sorry for raising my voice. So, Regina, that shows your humanness, how close you are to understanding the heart of people. So thank you for being with us. And we also acknowledge, as Fourth Way Foundation, the support of World Federation Against Drugs for this conference and all the other activities of the conference. So over to you, Regina.
Wow. I said on the first day that in Sweden we call it being bleedy, and it means getting emotional easy, and now you've started me off being emotional. So let's see how I do this today. Before I begin, I thought I would invite the rest of the panelists to come up on stage and sit here with me on the stage. We have some of my close friends, Carlton, Amy, Billy, please. And I will introduce you and your fantastic bios as you enter this podium. So give them a round of applause. Yeah. All right. Just try and get it in order, I see. I just want to first of all thank you all so much for being here with us today. We heard from Cressida this morning a fantastic recap of all of that we've learned over the past 2 days, and I really hope that today, those of us who've been here for the past 2 days will learn from all of you who are here from this day. So I hope we get a chance not only to hear you up here, but also in the breaks to discuss with one another and learn from one another. So what we've seen, and I'll just recap a bit, and I know Cressida did that very well, so I'll just paraphrase. We've seen that drugs and alcohol use in adolescence can harm the developing brain. We've spoken about the need for evidence-based, gender-sensitive, and data-driven prevention efforts. We've spoken about the recovery journeys among youth, children whose primary caregivers use drugs, what works and what doesn't work within prevention. And we've heard a lot of really good best practice examples, both from the region, the country, and from international speakers. And we can all agree, to paraphrase one of the speakers from yesterday, prevention works, and we need to start early. But something that's always kind of luring in the background of these discussions is the legalization of cannabis. And I'm sure that it hasn't gone unnoticed to anybody in this room how the industry is currently pushing towards a legalization and a normalization of cannabis use, not the least among youth. We can see how the industry is pushing towards this by using causes and promising big things such as, tax, more income through tax, the illegal market will dissolve, we'll get an increase of income through crop cultivation in countries where you can produce and grow and cultivate the crop. But what is very rarely talked about when this is being shown from the industry's perspective is the increase in drug-impaired driving, the very strong illegal market that remains, and most of all, the increase in consumption, and especially among youth. So how are this process of legalization underbuilt? It's a lot to do with normalization. And we can see that the most recent World Drug Report, and I'm sure that we'll hear about that from our colleague from the UN, it really shows that alongside legalization in those countries where it has become legalized, and through that normalization process that is created, the perceived risk of harm among youth is decreasing. At the same time, the proportion of people with psychiatric disorders and suicides associated with regular cannabis use has increased. Media, role models, social media, everything that we as young people, or you as young people, me as kind of young person, is consuming is really pushing towards this normalization of drugs, and specifically cannabis. So the cannabis industry itself has now found a new scope to ensure lifetime consumers, and they are marketing targeting women and young people. Normalization equals invisibility and a decrease in perceived risk. And the profiled harms often go very unnoticed, and I think this is something that we'll hear more about today. So this session really focuses on highlighting the perceptions and misperceptions of this conundrum that we heard about. And we have 3 excellent experts with us today that will take us through this and hopefully be able to answer a bit on the questions that we have in our minds, but also some of these issues that I raised. So to start us off is our great colleague from the UNODC, Billy Batware. He is the program officer at the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. He's responsible for the civil society unit's work on transnational organized crime and drug policy. Before joining the UNODC, Billy founded and managed several civil society initiatives, among them the United for Education and Sustainable Futures, whose flagship project is Youth Education Ambassadors. And you can read his full bio, which is long, on the website, but I just want to say that Billy is one of the representatives that we have a pleasure of working with from the UNODC, and he really showcases, not only through his work and his commitment to be here with us today and at other forums that we've had, that he is committed to civil society and ensuring that civil society is being heard on the United Nations level. So a round of applause for Billy. And you're welcome to take the podium. Oh, sorry.
Need a presentation. Yeah? Good morning. Thanks so much, Regina, for, I don't need a presentation, by the way. I don't need it. Yeah. Thanks so much for that kind introduction. And last day, so I hope you still have your energy from yesterday. And I think one of the reasons why I have been asked to speak first is because, as a side note, as a footnote, of course, I'm here as a representative of UNODC, United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. And this topic of this conversation today is one of the most sensitive topic that we have to deal with as the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. So I'm going to try and not get myself into any trouble with what I say, and just a footnote that, of course, I have my own personal views on this topic, but I cannot share those personal views in my capacity as a representative of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. But I have some information to share with you. And what I'm really looking forward to is also to hear from the youngsters themselves about what they think about this particular topic of this session. So what do we know about, from the evidence that we have produced as UNODC? We know that in the past 24 years, cannabis potency has increased as much as 4 times in parts of the world. And even as the percentage of adolescents who perceived the drug use as harmful have felt as much as 40%, despite evidence, of course, that the cannabis use is associated with a variety of health and other harms, especially amongst regular long-term users. This is shown by our World Drug Report of 2021. So when we talk about the effect of cannabis and how cannabis is perceived by young people, we also have to understand where cannabis is coming from and how is this being addressed at different national levels. And I can already mention that this is a topical issue within the Commission on Narcotic Drugs when it comes to legalization of drugs, different drugs. And what is very interesting also to know, for those of you who are not familiar with the conversation in Vienna, is that for the first time in the past few years, this topic is being discussed openly, right? Before talking about legalization, within the Commission on Narcotic Drugs has been almost a taboo topic. But this is being talked openly, which I think, in my view, is a good thing, so that countries who are considering to do the same are at least informed by the experiences of those countries who are going through the same issue. So we know that, for example, some of the main countries of origin of cannabis, India is becoming more and more a departure country rather than an origin country. We already know this from our studies. But also when it comes to the seizure of cannabis, India is one of the top countries when it comes to seizing cannabis. So this is good news, I think, at least for the youth of India, and it's good news for UNODC as well. So what does other evidence tell us? Our executive director put it really quite nicely in 2021 during the International Day Against Illicit Drugs, where she said that lower perception of drugs, and I think Regina just pointed to this as well, lower perception of drug use risk has been linked to the higher rate of drug use. And the findings of our report also highlight the need to close the gap between perception and the reality to educate young people on these issues and safeguard public health. So it is very important also to understand that obviously the commercialization of cannabis increase at least the positive perception of youth on cannabis. So looking at ads and media coverage, I was wondering even if, whether the youngsters themselves, they will even dare to share with us a little bit. Just really, I was very interested. If some of you, when you look at this coverage of cannabis, which cannabis association have you come across? I mean, have you made your own observations? And this is a question I put to you, not asking you to give me an answer right now, but really to reflect on this yourself as you come across these issues. So, when it comes to advertisement of cannabis, for example, we know that this is done differently in different countries. I have just a few examples from the US, and we have two people from the US who are going to be able to put those facts perhaps into perspective. And we know that, for example, in all states in the US which use cannabis, where cannabis is legalized, they have some degree of restrictions on advertising cannabis products. So for example, in California, advertising can be directed only at people aged 21 and older, and there are restrictions on the false claims of health benefits, and product labels cannot be appealing to children, right? In Washington, for example, advertisements cannot depict cartoon characters or contain pictures that could be appealing to children. So this is an example of how some of the states in the US are, let's say, dealing with the commercialization of cannabis. In North America, again, it appears that to have increased cannabis, at least legalization, appears to have increased daily cannabis use, particularly among young people. So we see the connection between legalization and the use of cannabis among young people. An associated increase in people with psychiatric disorders, suicides, and hospitalization have also been reported as a result of legalization in North America, at least. So the other question I would like to put to young people, again for reflection as we continue to go through this session, is how can we counter harmful narratives in your views? I think His Excellency, the gentleman who spoke this morning, Bala, if I can just call you how you've been called this morning, I think talked about how Kerala has been able to mobilize its population to do good, much better than the rest of India. So what are your thoughts when you think about how to counter harmful narratives? I think, again, this bottom-up approach as young people, what can you do about this? Just a question, again, to yourself as we go through this. So what can you do as young people, right, with these realities that we face? And again, you will hear more from the experts. I'm not really an expert in this. You have the experts over there who are dealing with these issues on a daily basis. So what can you do? In my view, I think there are several things that you can do in this regard as young people. And at this point, I'm really addressing the young people in the room. I think many of you, one of the things that I've really come to appreciate about Kerala is the energy and the enthusiasm and the knowledge and curiosity amongst young people. which has really struck me very positively. So use your mind, really use your mind and stay vigilant, I think, about these issues, and be a critical consumer of information, whether it's social media, whether it's in printed media. Be a critical consumer, a responsible and critical consumer of information. But also use your voice, because you're actually very, very loud. We've heard, you know, we were singing yesterday, and the youngsters just got us here and got us all singing. It was my first, well, actually dancing, not just singing, dancing was my first dancing experience in India. And I really enjoyed it. So really use your voice and your experience to reach out to other young people out there. I'm sure you have people you may know who might be susceptible or vulnerable to these issues. So please use your voice as well. But also use your own experience, positive and negative experience amongst your peers. And use your creativity as well. Many of you, I've met some of you members of the SOY program, and different other programs. You are very creative in what you do. Be creative as well. Use your knowledge of social media and communication out there to reach out to young people. And engage with us as United Nations. I can already mention that we are working, we just conducted a youth consultation to better understand your needs and your concerns so that we can serve you better. So please engage with us as well. And let me just end with this quote again from our executive director on this very particular topic. A decade of action, which is not much time by now, but I have confidence, this is executive director saying, I have confidence that with young people like yourselves, we can make it. So we can make sure that our children are safe from drugs, that you are safe from drugs, and that your future is safeguarded. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much, Billy. I'm so glad you brought up the potency of cannabis. I think that's something that we really ought to keep in mind when we talk about the perceived risk of harm. And as that is lessening, we can still see the potency of THC increasing. So it's important to bear that in mind, that the risks are actually increasing while we're thinking that they're less so. And what kept me up last night, really, and I have to mention this now, is that 2 days ago, we were listening to the radio here at the hotel, and there was a Swedish singer. And I said, oh, this Swedish singer, she's about 24, 25. She made it all the way to Trivandrum in India. How amazing is that? And I don't know how internet and phones work that well, but sometimes it feels like they're listening to us, right? So I said her name a few times, and yesterday she showed up on my TikTok. Right before bed, I was just scrolling along, and she showed up and she was talking about edibles. She was talking about the fact that she took edibles yesterday, and she got the munchies, and now she took more and more and more of these edibles and passed out. Completely normalized. There was one single comment in that TikTok that said, "You're talking about this as if you're going to the grocery store. Don't you know that drugs are harmful?" And her response was to joke about the fact that this person commented this. So it's everywhere, you know, it's reaching us all the time, and this normalization is making the perceived risk really disappear, because most of these comments that I could see was, ha 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 ha, you know, it's really not that bad. You know, they were making fun of this one person that managed to say in the comments that, why are you doing this? You're my role model. So I think that's something that we will hear a little bit more, or a lot more about from our next speaker, which is our very own president from WFAD, Amy Ronshausen. Woo, no? Amy is the executive director of Drug Free America Foundation. She is also the executive director of SOS, which work to prevent substance abuse, increase access to evidence-based treatment, and to promote sustained recovery. You can see the full bio here, and it is my great pleasure and honor to welcome you on the stage to talk more about the marketing. Thank you.
I've been so looking forward to stepping up on this step. I got to see how tall everybody gets to be. So unlike Billy, I like to get into trouble. And my friend Carlton likes to say it's good trouble. So I hope you'll agree with me that this is something that it's just so disappointing that my country has moved so far in this direction and that so many of other countries are looking at what we're doing and considering to do it as well. And the industry itself, the marijuana industry, is just so manipulative and so greedy that profits are more important than people. And they're pushing these addictive, high potency products on our youth, on our women, on our citizens everywhere. And so I have just a slideshow of pictures that I could show you for hours, but I just put a few together to show you what the commonplace marketing is in my country and what they're doing. So let's see. So who is big marijuana and what are they selling? So again, this is a snapshot into the US. Some of these faces you may recognize, but these are some of our celebrities who are in the marijuana business. So the girl with the bikini top up there is one of our Disney princesses. She was on like a Disney show, Bella Thorne, I believe her name is. We have Francis Ford Coppola from the movie industry, Seth Rogen, Jay-Z, which is, you know, not just a entertainer singer, he is an empire with everything that he's built. Gwyneth Paltrow, they've got all different kinds of products. So some of the people you might recognize and might think, of course, Willie Nelson is in the marijuana business, or of course, Cheech and Chong, or Wiz Khalifa, or Snoop Dogg. But you also have people like Martha Stewart, Whoopi Goldberg. They're all doing things in this business. And these are the products that they're selling. We've got gummy bears, we've got cookies, we've got, oh, well, you can't see them, chocolate bars. All kinds of things, and if you could see the picture, on some of the items it has the potency levels. I'll just kind of wait for a second because the whole slideshow is pictures. Okay. These are some candies. So this one, again, that you can't see, was taken by a colleague who was just at, yeah, I'm waiting. Yeah, okay. So just a couple weeks ago, they called it a counterculture festival in Tampa, Florida, from where I'm at. And I would argue that this is not even counterculture anymore. This is the culture. I think the counterculture would be drug-free. And so they had all kind of products available from this industry. So my colleagues attended and took some pictures. And they had all of these products that look like candy that you can buy in the store, like the nerd candies, the gummy bears, taffy kind of products. And Billy talked earlier about the high potency of marijuana. These products, some of them are 40% THC, which is the amount of the component in the plant that gets you high. Some of them could be up to 60% THC. And when you think about like the average marijuana that is seized by law enforcement on the street today, we're only close to about 30%, I would say. Okay, so there you can see the chocolate bars. I'm afraid. Okay, and so these were the candies. So you see the nerd ropes. Up at the top, there's gummies. You see it says Delta 8 gummies in sour apple flavors. We have Girl Scout cookie flavors. So you could see, you know, I want you to think about this on a couple different levels. One, you know, I mean, I'm a candy junkie, so this is appealing to me because I love sugar and I love candy. But obviously, this is marketing more toward youth, right? Because that's who buys these products. But also, what if you had this kind of product on your counter at home and your sibling who's, you know, 5 or 6 years old, or your niece or nephew or your grandchild saw this? I mean, they're not going to understand that this is something that's really bad for them. They're going to think it's candy and they're going to eat it. And so that's where we've seen a big increase in hospitalizations in the US because of these products. These look like some candies that you should be familiar with. Why these companies aren't suing them for trademark infringement, I have no idea. But these are Skittles and different candies. So you can see how, yeah, how they look very appealing. Yeah, Carlton and Mattsson said the industry is shutting me down. And that wouldn't be surprising. Yeah, I'm just gonna give. We talked about getting in trouble, so. What? 2 minutes.
So we have 2 minutes and I have a request. And this might make me seem either much older than I am or me trying to be much younger than I am. But I saved my Be Real from yesterday for today because I figure if I take one from the stage, I will win the race of having the coolest Be Real. And for those of you who don't know, it's that new app. I hope that you all know. Do you know Be Real? In the back? No? Nobody knows this? You know it. Okay, I'm not here to advertise, I won't say much more, but is it okay by you that I take a photo of you from the stage? Is it okay? Yes, okay, thank you. I figure it's the coolest photo that I'll take ever. Whoever wants to see it later, I'll show you. You're back. Okay, thank you.
Sorry. We'll see. Aha. So it's not just candy. We have it in drinks now. So they're putting it in organic lemonades, soda pops, iced teas, anything you can think of. Beers and spirits. So it's not just your candies and your cookies. If you're thirsty, we've got you covered. And we haven't stopped. This is something in the US, I'm not sure if it has crossed over everywhere else, but where they're mixing alcohol and energy drinks and syrup, or also the over-the-counter cough medications and soda and flavored syrups. So these syrups have the THC in them as well. Also, when you look at these products, think about how they could infiltrate your everyday life. So usually we know that somebody's using marijuana because they're smoking it, and it's pretty stinky, right? Like you can smell it from a mile away. These products conceal all of that. So they're super easy for kids to have at school, and they're just as easy for adults to have in the workplace. So when you think about how these products can be used and where people are using them, it gets pretty dangerous. So I was asked to kind of talk about how they're marketing specifically toward women and girls. So this is huge. So there was an article in Forbes magazine, and they said that women drive between 7 and 80% of all consumer purchasing, either through their buying power or through their influence. So that's why the marijuana industry has tapped into women, because they see the powerful influence that they have over basically any industry. So they have started there's books on this. So this one you could see A Woman's Guide to Cannabis Use. So everything you need to know as a woman on how you can use marijuana. But it's not just that they're marketing toward us, they're using women to market their products. So if you think about how the tobacco industry did this, years and years ago, there was always a very attractive, sexy woman using the product to try to put it toward other people, right? So here you see some of these, the picture of the two girls in the corner was at this festival that I told you about earlier. So you have these two young, beautiful girls who are the spokespeople for this counter, this vendor for people to come up to. But they're making sure that this is marketed by women. Here in the bottom corner, you have some women entrepreneurs. I believe these are THC popcorn things, and they're showing that, this is something that us as moms, us as women are using. And it's, and then these are some of the products. They want to make sure that it is just for women. So here you have, in the United States, you can go into dispensaries and buy these kind of products. So this one is a blunt specifically made, it's called the Confident Woman. So they're really kind of saying, be an individual, be your confident self, and here's the joint that will help you do that. And as ladies, we like pretty things, right? So we have to put our joint in this nice little handbag and put it in this nice little container, have very trendy and cute tissue paper to roll our joints in. So they're looking at specifically marketing toward things that are appealing to us, things that we would want to put in our Instagram or our TikToks, as Regina was saying. Also in makeup, so we have a whole makeup brand that is THC infused. I'm not really sure why. I'm not sure why your mascara has to have THC in it, only that it's on trend, that they're trying to make it part of your everyday culture, and they're trying to normalize it because, as Regina said, when we normalize also different body products and lotions. And ladies and gentlemen, I wish that I could stop there, but that is not you covered also with marijuana products. There's pills that you can take and vaginal suppositories. That is how far they have gone in this industry. And I could have put worse pictures up here, but I tried to be as nice as I could be, but this is really how far we have come. It is in every single thing that you can think of. Missed one. And I guess this is probably the one that makes my blood boil the most. We could have a whole conference on the impacts of marijuana use during pregnancy. It is not even an argument that this is one of the most harmful things that you could do while you're pregnant. There's not one piece of evidence that says that it would be good for the child. It's a mountain of science and research that says that this is not good. But this is also a demographic that they have preyed on. And I use that word purposefully because they are preying on us as women. Boy, I'm getting all the technical glitches today. So in the US, and this number is outdated, so I'm sure it's a little bit higher, and then also this is a national number, so when you look at individual states, it could be a lot different. But pregnant women between the ages of 15 and 44 that were surveyed and who used marijuana in the last month in 2015 was only at 3.4%. By 2018, that had risen to 7.1%. That's a little over 100% increase in 2 years. In my home state of Florida, it was a 3% increase in that same time period. So women are seeing these ads. You know, we see what's happening in the culture. We see how they're marketing toward us. And because these products are sold everywhere in the US, because of the marketing, because of the normalization, and because it's legal, they just believe that that means that it's safe. And this industry is taking advantage of that by actually purposefully marketing toward them. I believe there was a survey done in states that have legalized marijuana and the dispensaries that make recommendations, and over 80% of them made recommendations to pregnant women. So this is something that is really, you know, harmful and is happening every day in our country. And then my last slide is just that not only are we marketing toward women, not only is the marketing by women, not only are the products made specifically appealing toward women, they're bringing women into the industry. So this is a growing population. You can like Google women in weed and they'll bring up the top 20 women entrepreneurs in the United States. And I don't know if you've noticed right away, as soon as I did, the most disturbing thing about this picture, one of the women is pregnant in there as she's, you know, harvesting and promoting this industry. So this is where we're at. This is a truthful snapshot of what's happening in the US. Billy mentioned that some of our states have put regulations on how they can market. I agree with that statement, but nobody's enforcing that. In my home state, they're not allowed to use cartoon characters, but I can find one for you any day of the week. And nobody is stopping them from doing that. They're also not even allowed to have these candies, but here they are. So nobody's enforcing the rules on the books. So coming from a country who likes to think we're really good at regulation, it's not happening. So this is what it looks like. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that. I didn't jam-pack this with data because I think the pictures speak louder than the numbers, but I'm happy to talk about that as well. And that's it. So I've given the tech team a run for their money today.
Thank you so much, Amy. And I've been asked to give ourselves a few minutes, so perhaps this is a perfect time if you have any questions for Amy or for Billy. Just raise your hand. Yeah, we have 2 questions. I don't know if... Oh, there's somebody coming there. Let's see if this works.
Presentation. I got mixed up when it says there is a lot of cannabis that comes through India, but there is a lot of it again which is seized here. I don't know how big the problem of cannabis is in India, but could it be one way of fueling the problem here? And, you know, relating to what Cece this morning told us, that the police last evening asked him what they could do. Could this be one of the issues for him to handle? From Uganda, but sometime not very long ago, the police, which is in charge of narcotics, one of the big shots there had a problem. You know, he was in charge of seizing the drugs, but a lot of it was again going out of his office. Could it be the issue here? Why a lot of it seized in India, but a lot of it again going out of India? Can we, you know, give this as a task-sharing issue to CC, since the police is asking what they can do? Thank you.
Yes, we'll take a second one and then we'll answer, Billy and Amy will answer them. Thank you for your question. There's a hand here as well. a small question, and then maybe we can take you after for the maybe a bigger question if you have that.
Did you find any connection between tobacco industry and cannabis industry? According to the research, it means I ask, have any link with tobacco industry and cannabis industry, marijuana industry? It's me. Yes.
The connection between the marijuana industry and the
tobacco industries.
Tobacco. Sorry. Okay, so perhaps we have, we'll wait we'll answer these two. You have one each, and then we'll take the third question, and then maybe.
Should I go first, Amy? Yeah, okay, thanks so much. Thanks so much for the question from the gentleman. I think what I obviously, and I would leave this to perhaps, the colleagues here to maybe reflect on exactly what it is that is happening in India. But what I mentioned is that when we look at the origin and departure of cannabis within India, we see that at least compare the two, the origin and departure of cannabis within India, there's more cannabis departing from India than is originating. That means there's cannabis coming through India, not necessarily from India, but going through India to other routes. So that's I just wanted to clarify that. The seizure, obviously, we see that this is our study from 2021. We see that India is at the top of the list of countries that have seized more cannabis within their jurisdiction. Obviously, I cannot speak to why that has happened in India. I would assume that this is the effectiveness of the law enforcement in India, right? But I cannot speak to the specifics exactly why that is the case that India is at the top of the list of those countries in South Asia. South Asia, so I have to say it's not throughout the world, but in this particular region. Yeah, so I hope that clarifies if that was a confusion.
So the connection between the marijuana industry and the tobacco industry, yes. So on two different fronts. So the first would just be the strategy. So the tobacco industry, the strategy was to get the medical societies and doctors to endorse the use of smoking. So we have, ads from before I was born, I get to actually say that, where doctors were saying, 1 out of 10 doctors recommend menthol lights or whatever to their patients. And then they hid all the research that said how bad tobacco was for you. They sat on a mountain of that research. They lied about it. The tobacco industry, or the marijuana industry, is doing the same thing. In the US and in most countries that go through this process, their first step is to push it in as a medicine. And then from there, they build on. That's the stepping stone toward legalization. They're very quick to refute any findings that marijuana is harmful, and they certainly aren't putting out anything to say that it is. But then on the second point where they're connected is, we've done a really good job globally of, there's so many less, and now it's building back up again because of the electronic devices, but so many less tobacco users. Youth today aren't going to use tobacco right away because they know how harmful it is. They know how that industry lied to them and preyed on them. So the tobacco industry is losing money, and they need new clients, new lifetime users. So one, they created electronic cigarettes and vaping devices, but two, they've invested in the marijuana industry. So you have the Philip Morrises of the world, the Alturas of the world, who have invested in these big marijuana companies so that they too can have a piece of that financial grab.
Thank you so much, Amy. And I promised to do your question first after Carlton. I was just told that we can go ahead, so just to ensure that he gets his time, and then we'll start with you after, if that's all right. Okay, thank you. So last but definitely not last, wow, that was hard to say, Mr. Carlton Hall. He is the president and the CEO of Carlton Hall Consultancy.
I want to actually pick up the conversation where you left off, and the question brought us to April 14th, 1994. Congress in the United States brought all of the CEOs and executives of all the major tobacco companies to come and to answer for the issues that were coming up. And they asked, hold on. Hey, is this it? Is it on? Perfect, perfect, perfect. 1 minute. Got it. Thank you. Thank you very much. They asked each of the CEOs one question that I hope we'll be able to see. There you go. There you go. Do you believe nicotine is addictive? Right? Every CEO, if this works, there you go, answered the question the exact same way. No, sir, I do not believe our product is addictive. So let me ask a question before I go on. Are you changing this, or am I changing this? I need to change it. Give us one more moment.
I want to say that this is totally me and Carlton's fault. We cause trouble wherever we go, especially with IT, so they have done a phenomenal job. All conference, it's 100% on us.
Without
with all
question.
of our pictures.
Thank you. It is okay. While they are doing this, I'll just share one anecdote that, for me, actually summarizes what it is that we're talking about. I hope it does anyway. So I have to admit to you, this is my very first time in your country. And I'm having an extraordinary time. I will, yes indeed, yes indeed. Here's the thing. Can I be very, very honest? I will share with you that I have a very big problem with foods that are spicy. I'm just sharing. Don't judge me, don't judge me. So I'm careful about what it is that I digest, that I take in. And so I ordered food here. And they made the food as mild as you can make it. And it was wonderful. And I had this lovely salad. And I ate the salad, and the salad was great. And at the end of the salad, there was this long green, what I thought was a string bean that was there. And I took the string bean because I had this lovely meal, and I put the entire string bean in my mouth and chewed and ate. And it wasn't a string bean. It was what I found out later was a chili. And my mouth was on fire until 10 minutes ago. And I share that only to say to you this, that very often, what I believe we in many nations are doing, and definitely what many states in the United States are experiencing, is taking and consuming something that they don't understand, and having and reaping the consequences of that. And so, in a nutshell, okay, no worries, thank you. In a nutshell, we are experiencing the same thing. So I'm gonna start off again. In April 14, we brought into Congress all of the major executives that came from the tobacco industry. They asked them the question, do you believe nicotine is addictive? Do you believe your product is addictive? Everyone, to a person, answered in the exact same way. No, sir, I do not believe nicotine or our product is addictive. Every single one said the exact same thing. Much of the information that I'm going to provide to you comes from friends of ours, but really what I believe are the leading advocates globally around this issue of the marijuana industry and the dangers that they impose, and that's Smart Approaches to Marijuana. You can look them up. They are an extraordinary resource. But one of the things that they really highlight and brought to mind is that indeed, you were very insightful, whoever brought the question up. Big tobacco and big marijuana are now employing the exact same tactics. We've seen this story before. Regina talked about normalization, and there is a formula for normalization. You start off with denying the health harms that are associated with it. You start off by targeting young people. You make sure that you mix in a little bit of ensuring that you're resourcing political lobbies and getting and gaining celebrity endorsements. You talked about the young singer from Sweden that has a great deal of influence. You add to that what Amy shared just a little while ago. You make sure that whenever a scientific study comes out to indicate the dangers, you make sure you come out with your own scientific study to obscure the results and confuse things. This is a tactic that we've seen before, we've seen in the past, but suddenly what is old has become new again. And we're seeing the exact same things playing out in our nation and being spread around the world. And so here's really the gist of it. Our good friends at SAM share that like big tobacco of yesteryear, big marijuana knows that it needs lifelong addicted customers to prosper. Addictive industries generate the lion's share of their profits from addicts, not from casual users. This means that creating addiction is the goal. And this, in turn, means that they have to by virtue of meeting their bottom line needs, target the young. Hold on. So, what does this mean for us? It means that the fact that when we confront them about this, they are very insistent. They cannot and they do not make sure that their products are attractive to young people. And in fact, I believe Regina talked earlier, or it might have been Billy that talked earlier, about the fact that there are indeed some restrictions that are being placed in order in the US. You can't have cartoons, and you can't do this, and you can't do that. All these things that are in place, right? So they block ways of advertising and labeling and shapes and colors. But let me show you what the reality has really turned out to be. In New York City, I was walking along, and I don't know if they have the same thing here, but in the United States, when I was growing up, they would have the ice cream truck. And the ice cream truck was colored, and it would play music, and when you heard the ice cream truck, you would come running to get the ice cream. My ice cream truck was Mr. Softy. And when Mr. Softy came out, they would play a song. And I would come running, right? Well, I'm walking along New York City, and I see this brightly colored truck. And it was playing music to get attention. And as I walked by, this lovely young lady stuck her head out, and she said these words verbatim. She said, "Hey, guy, don't be shy. Come get high. I got your gummies. I got your candies. I got your lollipops. Don't be shy. Come get high." I looked at her and I said, "Can I take your picture, please?" What was even more devastating is that directly behind me was a woman with her 2 small children. And as we were walking by, one of the children said, "Mommy, Mommy, can I have a lollipop?" Looking at the truck. At the time that I walked by, in fact, in New York City, the law did not yet say that recreational marijuana was legal. So nothing that they were selling on the truck had a THC value that would require, that would get anyone high. So absolutely they were selling a lie. But how many of you will recognize with me that getting people high was not the goal of this truck? Can somebody tell me what you think the goal of this truck is? Say it loud. Normalization, that's exactly right. And as Regina already shared, normalization equals invisibility. When you normalize something, it becomes invisible. I would say to you that some 10 plus years ago, even 15 years ago, a truck even in New York City like this would have been unheard of. But now we walk by it every day, and there's even worse that's happening in the street, because when you normalize something, you make it invisible. The job of every preventionist here in this room is to make the invisible visible. And so, we understand and we recognize that this is a billion-dollar business, but we want to be clear about the fact that we're not talking about this. As Amy already identified, we are talking about the various products in which this can come out. But what is the difference? The difference is, one, potency. A good bit of studies that are going on indicate that more than 21% of all sales in some states, the products that they're selling has a THC value of higher than 70%, right? Which is incredible, incredible. The fact of the matter is, since it's not regulated, we don't know what we are consuming, just like the chili I had yesterday. Delivery. All the science suggests that when you change the delivery mechanisms, usage will go up. And so by virtue of the fact that we are now seeing things like blunts and edibles, drinks coming to the forefront, usage is going up exponentially, which is an unknown danger, an unseen danger. Vaping is happening within our country, so young people are more vulnerable states than they've ever been before. And synthetic marijuana has now become more of a part of the normalization that's taking place in our country. As a result of all this, these are just some recent numbers, marijuana use disorder has gone up exponentially in our country, and almost no one is talking about these dangers. But you're seeing Snoop Dogg and you're seeing Jay-Z and you're seeing the Sweetest Singer talk about how fun it is. So, we recognize the fact that this is about money. And one thing that I know, since we're talking to young people today, and I see all the extraordinary young people that are here in this audience, one thing I know about young people is they don't like to be lied to. And what I'm sharing with you is that the industry is lying to us in large measure, right? Why? Because of money. As Amy already indicated, they are also targeting specific populations. She shared with you how they are targeting specifically women. Why? Because if you're going to make as much money as possible, you have to do two things. You have to ensure that the customers that you have will stay with you forever. And you have to ensure that where you don't currently have customers, you make them customers. And so that's what's going on as they are targeting both young people and they're targeting women. And this organization that actually is the leading analytics company for the marijuana industry. You can get a lot of this information just by looking up the marijuana industry themselves. They share all of their information to help us. But what they're showing here, and if you can look at this, women indeed are targeted, but they tell you how to target women. How might we get women engaged in this? Well, look at this. They talk about pain management. They talk about relaxation. They talk about stress release because all women need stress relief. They talk about reducing anxiety, increasing wellness. Yeah, if you promote the wellness aspects of this product, then it will be attractive to women. It helps them fall asleep. If they follow this model, then women will be engaged in this process. And in fact, there has been a report that indicated that women are the fastest growing consumers of legalized marijuana. Not merely women, but we also have to pay attention to those young people, because as we are having conversations and debates about the medical usage of marijuana in many of our states, what is actually occurring, what's happening, is that the advertisements that are going on are actually having a negative impact on the young people that are passing by. So if you can see down here, you see the billboard, right? So the billboards like these are popping up all over in states where medical marijuana has become legalized, right? Well, this remarkable study by Rand has indicated that teens who reported seeing more medical marijuana advertising were more likely to report having used marijuana in the past 30 days. And they were more likely to say that they expected to use it over the next 6 months. They were also likely to express more positive beliefs about the drugs, such as seeing that marijuana could actually help someone have more fun or temporarily escape their problems. They also reported more negative impacts that were occurring in their lives. These are not young people that are actually using, these are just the young people that are seeing the advertisements and the influence that those advertisements are having on those young people. So these invisible dangers are not being spoken about. There are indeed rules that are being put in place to try to be protective, but I think that there are challenges that we have to confront related to those rules. In social media and online advertising, right, there are certain rules in place, but you can look up any supporters of the marijuana industry, and they have all kinds of guides and help to help you circumvent and get around the rules that are associated with how, if you are interested in selling marijuana, how you would do that online. There are things that you would do. You would not talk about, you have rules. They have rules on social media where you can't simply advertise selling marijuana, but you can talk about marijuana. You can talk and demystify cannabis as they share, right? You can chronicleize and tell news reports about it, all the while advertising is going on. And I'm really happy to be able to say, I asked my friend yesterday, and she just got back to me this morning, so I just included this slide today. A remarkable friend of mine by the name of Dr. Kim Wagner from Wake Forest University actually just worked on with her colleagues a new report that is just coming out that I think is extraordinary. What they did is that they studied 150 dispensaries and those that were advertising online, and those that were cited by the Federal Drug Administration of the United States receiving warning letters because they had been found in violation of the rules. In other words, there are certain things you cannot do according to the US. You cannot advertise that you have health benefits without you going through a certain process, right? You cannot advertise that you can benefit someone unless you go through a certain process. And you cannot advertise something as being consumable, being a food, unless you go through a specific process. Well, there are all kinds of advertisements that are going on online that do all of those things without going through any of the process, so they're receiving warnings associated with this. And this study is sharing the fact that those are being cited, but they are not receiving any consequences because the marijuana industry has found out that they can receive the warnings and not have to deal with the consequences of it. And so we're looking into that. It is extraordinary what they were able to do. And so, with that being said, what I'll share with you is that these same tactics I'm concerned about is being employed in other nations. They're following the same rules in other nations, whether it is in Europe or whether it is in Africa, and it is now coming to Asia. And as such, there is a concern that I have. This is a study by a leading investment company that is indicating the investment certainty of investing in the marijuana industry globally. And what they shared is simply this that I thought was illuminating. The bottom line, according to this British investor, the cannabis industry is providing more and more is proving more and more valuable every year, even during COVID-19, as well as being profitable. By investing in this direction, you will not only diversify your investment portfolio, but you will also make a profit. And here's the key: because the market forecasts and trends show a positive growth trends in the demand for medical marijuana. This is not about health. This is about wealth. The conversations and the debates that we're having is not exclusively about legalized weed. More importantly, it is about commercialized THC. And if we are going to do anything about this, then we have to do, based upon those of you who heard my conversation on yesterday, make those invisible dangers blatantly obvious for those to see. And I'm employing all of you young people to help in that regard. If you can take this on and become the truth speakers to your generation, you can help make the invisible visible and your communities a safer place. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Carlton. And I promised you were in for a treat, and I hope that you enjoyed and learned a lot from Carlton. We're running a bit over time due to the technical difficulties, but I'm sure that we can spend just a few minutes, 5 minutes or so, to answer some questions, because I believe it's necessary with all of this new information that we've gained. And I'd like to start with the man who I promised to go first, and then I really hope that some of you who joined us today have some questions, because this really is something we want to learn from you. And if you brought with you some of those thoughts that Billy asked you to think about from the beginning, please do share them. But please,
thank you very much for this debate. And it changed the way how the war is going. More for us that are coming from developing countries. Like my country, Sierra Leone, 5 years back, a license was given to a company on the caveat of medical marijuana. So, in 1961, marijuana was on the list of narcotic. But last year, we saw it, the UN has declassified marijuana from that list. And for us as advocates, it's very worrisome. For us that are coming from countries that are impoverished. Before I came, there is somebody who is a professor, Nathan. He is in Sierra Leone, presently giving ideas around West Africa countries because of the way the trend of economy is going. And through our advocacy, the company that was given the license, we pressurized the parliamentarians. And the current government has withdrawn that license. Why? Because the area, the geographic area, the medical marijuana industry was given license, the way we see the patterns and the trend of more our farmers. Our farmers now have shifted of growing food to plant marijuana. And now, the UN has disclassified medical marijuana from the list of narcotic. And the way the trend is going in America. All of us in Africa or other developing countries watch America as the best practice. I like what Emmy said. It is now targeting the women, more especially women that are pregnant. For us here as advocates, Ghana, in the next 2 weeks, they will be having a policy on marijuana to be legalized for medical use. And South Africa and Zimbabwe, they have legalized an aspect of cultivating marijuana. And this NETAM, they are in Africa now trying to talk to legal authorities for us to change our narratives in terms of money. Their target is money, not the human value. So, on that note, I am calling upon advocates in here. Let us stand for us not to allow those policies to be ratified in our country. Thank you.
One more question. Is it okay?
To just sort of ask the back rows to share with us something first, and then we'll head to you. I'm sorry for doing that, but
No
since
problem.
we have new participants today, please, if there's a microphone. Thank you.
before asking my question, thanks for giving me a wonderful platform, because this platform gives a lot of new information for us. My question is, as I represent youth in my country, I am asking a new question. You give me a lot of information about marijuana industry and cannabis industry. These industries are not common in India currently. So my question is, how, as a youth, how can we make interventions in India for doing a cannabis industry not common? I clarify because cannabis industry not common in India. So how can, as a youth, make interventions, or how can we make influence in policy level? That's my question.
So how can you counteract this trend? Which of you do you have? Thank you for that comment. Thank you.
So I'll go first. One, I think that your voice is the most important voice in this fight. And I'll say it's a fight. You know, they see us coming from a mile away. They know that we're anti-drug, and they don't think our generation really matters anymore. They are making policies based on what they think is best for you. So you need to have that voice to tell them. So what we have found that has worked with youth in the United States when pushing back against these policies is to meet with their stakeholders, whether at the local level or at the state level or at the federal level, and one, just let them know that we don't support this, because lawmakers think that all youth want this, and they want to do something that you want because you're the people that vote them into power. So they need to hear that this isn't what you want. But also we found that bringing information from programs that have started, like information from the United States, and saying, we don't want this in our community. We don't want these gummy bears. We don't want an increase in traffic fatalities, an increase in mental health things. You know, there isn't a good model. Nobody's done this right. I don't think there is a way to do it right. Anyway, when you put a harmful substance out there and you increase availability and accessibility, you're just increasing the problems that come along with that. So showing them that, but letting them know that this isn't what you want, I think speaks more than what we could do. So it's very important that you have those conversations.
Exactly, and I'll just build off of what Amy just shared and just try to encourage you. First of all, I acknowledge you for being the champion that you are and for standing up right now and asking this question, because it was a very brave thing to do. Throughout our history, young people have always led the charge in bringing about change. You have been the truth speakers. This is what we need now. For you to learn, educate yourselves, because as I just mentioned and shared earlier, the industry is doing everything and spending all kinds of resources to confuse and to manipulate the conversation right now. But if you were able to be the truth speaker about this to your peers, then it would go a long way to holding off the effect and the impact that the industry is trying to have and take place in your country, because I know that the conversations are now happening in this country. All right? Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, and I think they gave me some sort of notice posting the break on the screen. But if you, whom I stole your voice before, please, if you can make it short, that would be great. Thank you.
Nothing, so mostly like cannabis, you know, when I talk to my friends and probably in the social media, I'm seeing it's more like a natural thing. It is a plant. There is nothing harmful. It is God-given, or whatever like people want to talk about it. But when you showed it on the screen that it is like chemically induced, I think that message is not conveyed strongly across the youth or any human beings out here. So what are the different campaign methods that you're applying so that this message is given to people that it is mostly chemically induced rather than God-given?
So today's marijuana is probably the most unnatural thing that there is. In a perfect world, if we looked at the plant from biblical times, it was an equal amount of THC and CBD, cannabidiol. So the cannabidiol would interfere with the THC, making it irrelevant. But that's not what consumers want. So I won't say it's genetically modified because I think scientifically that might not be the right term, but it's been synthetically modified to push down the CBD level and push up the THC level. So that alone is what makes it unnatural. But then in order to grow the most potent and biggest plant, we have manipulated the growth cycle of that plant by now growing it indoors, so it has multiple lifespans, so that we can produce more product. And when you take that product and you create something that you're going to ingest, all those chemicals that you used to make it the biggest, baddest, most productive plant possible, you're now ingesting as well. And there's been research on the neurotoxins and the pesticides and the bacterias that are all found in these products because of that process. So natural would probably be the last thing I would call it at this point.
Thank you. Now, I see that there are questions, and I apologize for cutting this short. I believe we all need a bit of a break. But please, well, sorry. I need a break. To check out, not because I'm bored. I'm very much not bored. In the break, please catch any of these three fantastic speakers, or myself if you have more questions. And I hope for the rest of the day that more of you in the back, the newcomers for today's last day, will have the chance to speak more. So thank you so much for the session. Thank you to all of you. And I hand over to CC.
Thank you, Regina, Billy, Carlton, and Amy. That was wonderful. So they are yours for the break, okay? So don't let them have tea, but make sure you ask them all the questions that are in mind. Just two important announcements. I understand that many of you have kept your